A scream woke Elizabeth Walker in the middle of the night. Her left arm hurt unusually. It was alive, writhing like fire ants under her skin. Her nightgown soaked in sweat as she grasped the horribly swollen leg. "James," she breathed, unable to speak of the pain. Her spouse stirred alongside her and quickly stood up when he noticed her face in distress. Both froze in dread under the strong bathroom light. Beth's arm had practically quadrupled, violent red streaks rushing toward her shoulder, yet James stumbled backward due to her skin's undulation. Within her, something moved. "Oh God," he murmured, grabbing for his keys. "We must reach Mass General, now." Beth watched her arm pulse with each heartbeat as they rushed through Boston's silent streets, knowing her horror was just beginning. Like and comment with your city of observation. Proceed with the tale. Boston has prided itself on combining old-world elegance and modern innovation. Cobblestone streets and colonial buildings flanked world-class hospitals and research organizations. When Elizabeth Beth Walker secured a distinguished position at the Boston Biological Research Institute aged 45, the Walker family moved to Beacon Hill 15 years ago because of this excellent blend. Beth was a leading ethnobotanist. She had traveled to distant Amazonian areas dozens of times to identify therapeutic jungle plants. Her slim physique belied her incredible endurance, and while streaks of silver laced through her once golden hair, her bright blue eyes retained the strong, perceptive abilities that had established her profession, but they had lingered too long on the thickening wrinkles surrounding them. Her slight waves were showing her age. By 47, James Walker was one of Boston's most trusted structural engineers. His occupation required firm shoulders and sturdy hands, whereas his growing worry over Beth's adventures showed in his pinched brow. He proudly supported her employment while counting the days till their safe return to their lovely colonial home. Their children grew up with pressed plants and forest tales. Lily, 12, inherited her mother's scientific enthusiasm and fearlessness, decorating her bedroom with botanical drawings and field images. Mason, 9, was more like his father, attentive and careful, always worried his mother might disappear on an expedition. Few people understood, neither her loving children, colleagues, or James, that Beth's love for natural remedies sprang from personal tragedy. She lost her childhood closest friend to a rare neurological illness at 13, which changed her life. Beth was troubled by this recollection as she entered middle age. She wanted to discover before time and importance passed. The 60-year-old parasitology specialist, Dr. Richard Harrison, would soon enter their lives. He had hidden links to Beth's world that would form an unforeseen bond with the suffering woman being transported to his hospital. Beth scrutinized her bathroom mirror 3 weeks before that fatal night. Unforgiving morning light highlighted the small wrinkles around her eyes and subtle jawline sag. In 2 days, she would lead another Amazon expedition, a coveted research cooperation that may ensure her department's financing for years. She appeared exhausted and aged when she apologized. She murmured, "You're being ridiculous," as she applied moisturizer more forcefully than required. But she couldn't forget last month's conference, when a pharmaceutical representative asked her 32-year-old assistant instead of her, or how younger scholars were increasingly invited to speak on panels where she had once been the expert. That card had been in her wallet for about 2 months. "Doctor," a colleague gave William Hargrove aesthetic medicine to her after cocktails one evening. "He's not on the hospital roster," her pal muttered. "However, his work is exceptional, very discreet and inexpensive." Beth almost threw it away a dozen times. The location led her to a Back Bay brownstone conversion. The clinic had a beautiful atmosphere with shiny surfaces, gentle lighting, and framed medical diplomas that Beth didn't inspect attentively. With his salt and pepper hair and crisp white coat, Dr. Hargrove exuded confidence. "Just a little rejuvenation before your trip," he remarked, preparing a syringe with a proprietary blend of collagen boosters and natural herbs. Beth cringed at the needle but acknowledged its necessity. In her field, perception mattered, leadership mattered. "You'll see immediate skin elasticity improvement," he said while working. "Over the next month, the full impacts emerge. After your adventure, you'll need a follow-up therapy." He gave her a tiny vial of cream. "To speed up the process, use this nightly. The injection site has been painful for days." Beth endured the pain. By the time she boarded her trip to Brazil with her research team, She nearly believed she could see a difference, a freshness to her appearance that made her stand taller at the pre-expedition briefing. Beth was welcomed like an old friend in the Amazon. As she led her crew through thickly packed trees, the damp air smelled of flora and earth. Olivia, her assistant, recorded data, while two graduate students collected samples under Beth's supervision. Eduardo, their local guide, had guided Beth on prior journeys and complemented her scientific understanding with his forest knowledge. They noticed something was incorrect on their fourth day in the field. Beth's arm throbbed when she used her headlamp before dawn. She checked the swelling injection site and saw an angry red circle with a rising center. Something about its aspect chilled her, not the morning air. Está bien. When Eduardo saw Doctora groaning while packing her equipment, he questioned. She assured him, "I'm fine," pulling down her sleeve. Concerned about an insect bite, Eduardo narrowed his black eyes. "This area has many harmful insects." He cautioned that the human botfly is present in the area, pointing to nearby flying insects. "They lay eggs on your skin, which hatch into larvae and grow inside you. Incorrect removal can be unpleasant and dangerous." Beth bowed respectfully but ignored his concern. She has dealt with forest insects for almost a decade without incident. She had more important issues. They were close to finding a plant species with anti-inflammatory qualities that could treat her childhood friend's brain inflammation. For several days, Beth wore long sleeves and quadrupled her antibiotic dose from the expedition's medical bag, despite the heat. She kept extensive symptom notes in a journal secret from her team. The agony increased, along with an uncomfortable sensation beneath her skin and a periodic movement she attempted to dismiss as muscular spasms. The expedition ended, and Beth returned to Boston with edema covering most of her upper arm. She hid it from James and her children with forced grins and one-armed hugs that crushed her heart wearing loose clothes. She searched online at night, her stomach churning as parasitic illness photographs matched her symptoms horribly. Still, she said nothing. Based on her findings, the Research Institute was days away from applying for a large grant. Lily competed in science fair. James was working on an important bridge inspection project, and Mason needed help with his school trip anxiousness. Beth believed she could wait till these milestones. She applied more Hargrove's cream in hopes of relief. As the inflammation worsened, the skin became frighteningly translucent, allowing her to see dark forms moving beneath. She would lock herself in the bathroom at night and bite a towel to push against the swelling tissue, trying to relieve daily pressure. Beth got a text the morning before she collapsed. "Second treatment late, difficulties predicted, return to clinic immediately." With shaky hands, she deleted it instantly. She was a scientist and couldn't. She should not have trusted an unlicensed doctor with unknown mixtures. That night, she served her family dinner with a frozen smile and an acid-burned arm. She watched Lily and Mason argue over the last dinner roll as James gently mediated with a story from his day. She could not bear to break the innocent moment with the truth. "Mom, are you okay?" Lily saw Beth tremble when raising her water glass and questioned sharply. "Just tired, sweetheart," Beth said, her voice more stable than she felt. "A good night's sleep can fix anything." The last tranquil moment before the storm. The fluorescent lights at the emergency room of Massachusetts General Hospital cast a harsh light on Beth's pale face. James stepped by the gurney, holding his phone to notify his parents, who had gone to their house to remain with the sleeping children. The triage nurse prioritized Beth after seeing her swelling arm with purple streaks rapidly approaching her shoulder. "Mrs. Walker, evaluate your pain from 1 to 10, I asked the nurse. She was a kind young woman with concern in her eyes. 9, Beth muttered, then corrected. "Maybe 10. Admitting seemed like capitulation after weeks of silence. James's head snapped. Beth said it was bearable, but the pain medicine only provided minimal relief, while Dr. Winters gently checked the swelling area. Beth winced as gloved fingers explored the most delicate, tight, glossy skin. Each circular lesion featured a tiny central aperture that pulsed occasionally. "I'm noticing some unusual traits," Dr. Winters stated. "I would like to visit a specialist before starting. Have you visited abroad recently, Mrs. Walker?" The doctor nodded knowingly as Beth mentioned her Amazon employment. "I'm calling Dr. Harrison." James, the leading authority on tropical parasites and illnesses, made a low, strained voice while pulling a chair near Beth's bedside. "Why did you not inform me of the severity? How long has this happened?" Beth averted her gaze, unable to address his concern. "It originated in Brazil. It seemed like an infected insect bite." I didn't want to bother you, said Beth. You are my wife, my job. His voice shook with intensity. What else are you not sharing? The privacy curtain rustled when Dr. Richard Harrison approached, interrupting her response. Tall, distinctive with silver hair and keen eyes, he exuded the serene authority of someone who has seen nature's worst. He nodded at James before focusing on Beth. Dr. Walker, I believe you are a botanist who recently returned from the Amazon. He spoke professionally yet warmly. I'll inspect your arm if that's okay. He stayed neutral while examining the swelling spot. However, Beth, trained to spot minute subtleties in her work, noticed his eyes contracting. His queries focused on her rainforest activities, symptom history, and previous therapies. Under there, something is moving. Is it not? Beth expressed her worry of it causing her sleepless nights. It is a parasitic infection. Exactly. Dr. Harrison raised his eyes. You are familiar with Dermatobia hominis, a human botfly. Our guide warned us about them. She swallowed hard. I should have said something sooner. The doctor nodded. James held Beth's hand as Dr. Harrison prepared to inject a local anesthetic and perform a small incision to confirm the diagnosis and remove parasites. A sterile field was prepared, expertly arranged instruments. While the scalpel cut a neat 5-centimeter incision along the largest swelling, everyone leaned forward unconsciously. Beth saw the writhing botfly larvae she feared. Their segmented bodies with circular spine rows had been anchored in her flesh. But as Dr. Harrison deftly withdrew 3 adult larvae, his countenance turned from clinical to confused. This isn't right, he said, studying the extraction site better. The tissue around the larvae exhibits peculiar traits. The wound was carefully probed with forceps, revealing a small synthetic capsule buried in the tissue. The capsule was partially dissolved but unmistakably man-made. Walker, Dr. Harrison responded cautiously, this seems to be a slow-release implant. This is not something a botfly would make. Have you received any injections or treatments in this area recently? The question remained an open question. Beth closed her eyes, feeling guilt as James brutally tightened his grip on her hand. She started, but stopped, tears escaping her closed eyelids. Yes. Collagen and rejuvenation surgery preceded my trip to Brazil. Where was this treatment done? Dr. Harrison's voice had a new sharpness. And by whom? A Back Bay clinic. Not a regular one? Her voice lowered to a whisper. A doctor named Hargrove, and Dr. Harrison remained still, with forceps hung over the wound. He said again with a strained voice. Beth nodded softly, confused by William Hargrove's response. Instead of responding, Dr. Harrison turned to the nurse. Page Detective Reynolds from the Medical Crimes Division immediately and prepare for a more extensive debridement procedure, he reminded Beth, with unexpected sensitivity. Walker, you may have been intentionally infected. James sprang up abruptly, his face flushed with fury and dread. What are you saying? Someone maliciously hurt her. Dr. Harrison did not look away from Beth. I fear so. If my thoughts are true, the secondary infection may occur soon. The hours after Dr. Harrison's unexpected announcement were filled with medical activity and emotional struggle. Beth was taken to a private room on the infectious diseases ward where a trained team carefully removed the larvae and what looked to be a dissolving synthetic capsule from her arm. James alternated between walking the antiseptic corridor outside and sitting quietly at her bedside. He listened to his phone while he planned for his parents to remain longer with the kids. The betrayal in his expression when he looked at Beth hurt more than anything else. As James hung up, Dr. Harrison approached. Can I chat privately with you? Dr. Harrison invited James to sit in a tiny consulting room down the hall. Your wife's situation is rare and worrying. Despite suffering, parasite infections are curable. My issue is delivery. James glanced at him, believing the tissue study revealed a chemical component that attracts parasites. Someone applied bug-attracting chemicals to my wife's arm. The situation is more complex than that. Dr. Harrison's clinical tone couldn't hide his fury. We found a slow-release capsule with cosmetic fillers and an attraction ingredient. It was engineered to rupture gradually, resulting in a delayed reaction that is hard to link to the original process. Why would someone do this? The voice of James cracked. William Hargrove, a former dermatologist with promising skin regeneration research, was the subject of Dr. Harrison's cautious questioning. Ethical issues involving uninformed patient experiments cost him his license 8 years ago. He disappeared from medicine but may have practiced underground. As a nurse adjusted Beth's IV, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. James snatched it up to mute it when he saw a text message. Second treatment late, difficulties predicted, return to clinic immediately. James shook his hand as he handed Dr. Harrison the message, prompting him to contact the number. This disconnected after one ring. However, the doctor's expression darkened. "We must call Detective Reynolds a sap. This reinforces our suspicions." A woman entered the doorway, summoned by name. Beth was surprised by Detective Samantha Reynolds. Reynolds was a small woman in her early 40s, with attentive eyes and a practical chestnut bob, not the rugged, threatening figure she expected. "Dr. Harrison?" She nodded and focused on Beth. "Mrs. Walker, I understand your current situation, but I need to ask you about William Hargrove and the treatment you underwent." According to Beth, a coworker recommended Hargrove's name after she voiced frustration over appearing fatigued in trip photos. She felt fear at the quiet appointment and the unmarked clinic's shiny surfaces. Because of her vanity, she had let a predator catch her. Dr. Harrison's explanation of his role in the case was the most shocking. 8 years ago, I served on the medical board that revoked Hargrove's license, he stated, revealing a jagged scar from wrist to elbow. I was one of his unknowing test subjects before that. I almost lost my arm, but Hargrove had changed his methods to make them harder to trace by the time I reported it. Beth was overwhelmed by her predicament. In addition to fighting a purposeful infection, she was entangled in a years-long vendetta between two doctors, one ethically bound and the other not. Weak morning light clashed with institutional illumination through Beth's hospital room's big windows. 24 hours after her hospitalization, her arm's surgical debridement had fatigued her but reduced the severe agony. As new ailments appeared, relief faded. "The numbness is spreading," Beth told Dr. Harrison in the early rounds, her voice tense. Dr. Harrison remained calm, but Beth could sense his concern as he examined her reflexes and sensation. Her hand indented when he pressed a pin, but she felt nothing. "We're dealing with more than just the parasitic infection," he wrote in her chart. After removing the capsule, tissue biopsies revealed neurotoxic residue. He left the sentence unfinished, offering broad-spectrum antivenoms without understanding their composition. "You're saying I've been poisoned," Beth said clearly. Even she was astonished by her clinical tone. Perhaps this was how her patients felt when she gave severe diagnoses. That weird, floating sense, as if the bad news affected someone else. James, who had slept in a chair opposite her bed, appeared 10 years older. Sleeplessness and silent crying had made his unshaven face haggard and his eyes bloodshot. He insisted, "There must be more you can do," his voice cracking. Dr. Harrison told Mr. Walker that they are conducting all possible tests and treatments. The toxicology team is identifying the chemical 24/7. We are now treating symptoms and monitoring for systemic impacts. After the doctor left, the room was silent, but for monitoring devices beeping. Beth glanced at the ceiling, unable to meet her husband's gaze. Deception hurt her chest more than any physical symptom. James finally asked Beth, why? The question he had been avoiding arose. Why seek medical care from an underground doctor? Why hide it from me? "You wouldn't understand," she muttered. "Try me." His uncommon rage made her uneasy. "From where I sat, my bright scientist wife risked her life for a few wrinkles." Beth shed tears. He asked, "Explain it to me," sitting on the edge of the bed to avoid the I-5 lines. "Help me understand." Beth looked out the window, contemplating. How could she explain her gradual loss of confidence, subtle dismissals, fewer conference invitations, and younger colleagues' ideas being accepted while hers were labeled traditional approaches? "Recall Dr. Collins at the Botanical Symposium last year?" she finally inquired. James, bewildered by the apparent non sequitur, nodded. Despite being 5 years older than me, his belly strains his shirt buttons and his mostly gone hair, everyone listens when he speaks. Her voice turned harsh as they called him distinguished, experienced, a veteran in the field. During a presentation on the anti-inflammatory qualities of an Amazonian fungus, 2 graduate students said, "Shame she's past her prime. Her work was groundbreaking a decade ago." She faced James, seeking his understanding. "Credibility comes with age in your field. It makes women invisible in mine. I compete for funding with researchers in their 30s. James held her hand, his rage turning to sadness as he fought to maintain funding for his department. Beth, jeopardizing your health with a back alley surgery is not the lady I married. My wife tackles challenges. Your wife worries about becoming irrelevant, she whispered. Beth gasped, arching her back in discomfort, interrupting their conversation. A scorching sensation sent waves of nausea down her spine. Her heart rate and blood pressure rose, alarming the monitors beside her bed. Emergency interventions dominated the following hours. Medical professionals rushed in and out of her bed, adding fresh IV drugs, collecting blood for urgent testing, and talking in quiet tones she couldn't hear. While drifting in and out of consciousness, Beth occasionally noticed James's troubled expression or Dr. Harrison's focused stare. While conscious, she heard Dr. Harrison inform James that the toxin is harming her neurological system faster than expected. Signs of autonomic instability include variations in heart rate, blood pressure, and temperature regulation, James demanded. It means we're running out of time, Dr. Harrison said solemnly. Without a specific antitoxin, symptoms can only be managed, not the root cause. Beth experienced vivid hallucinations in her semi-conscious state. The ceiling tiles above her bed became insect-writhing masses. She felt them creeping under her skin, not just in her arm, but throughout her entire. She struggled to scream but was choked. The most persistent vision was of her childhood friend Sarah, standing at the foot of her bed, 13, as she had been before the uncommon neurological disease took her life slender. Pale, smiling, and fearless. "You're running out of time, Bethy," Sarah replied, using her childhood nickname that hadn't been used in 30 years. Beth tried to reply, but her lips froze. "Not for you," Sarah shook her head. In her vision, Sarah pointed to the door where Lily was watching with fear. Beth attempted to grab her daughter, but her body resisted. After Beth regained consciousness, Detective Reynolds interviewed James about Hargrove's clinic in her room. Beth listened groggily as her husband recounted the text messages, Back Bay location, and other information gathered from Beth's disjointed admissions. "We identified the building," Reynolds said. "However, when authorities arrived, the space was already cleared. Every piece of equipment was gone. He knew we were coming," Dr. Harrison stated. Reynolds nodded grimly. "Someone must have tipped him off. Our investigation has identified 2 more victims with comparable symptoms, but not as severe as Mrs. Walker's. Both were professional ladies who underwent cosmetic treatments." "It's a pattern," Dr. Harrison said. "Hargrove preys on successful women in competitive sectors who are unlikely to disclose cosmetic procedures to coworkers, making them ideal subjects for his investigations." The term experiments chilled Beth's feverish body. "What is he doing?" she asked. Her harsh whisper. 3, astonished she was awake, turned to her. Dr. Harrison checked her vitals before answering at her bedside. "Based on tissue samples and past research, Hargrove is likely researching parasite interactions for cosmetic purposes. Using subcutaneous tissue to transmit collagen-stimulating chemicals could revolutionize dermatological treatments," he said. But Hargrove ignored all safety regulations and ethical guidelines. Despite medication and discomfort, Beth's scientific mind saw the alarming idea of utilizing human subjects without informed consent, oversight, or care for consequences. "The toxin comes from the larvae," Dr. Harrison said, his eyes widening. "Yes, actually." "How did you know?" "Exactly what I do," Beth whispered. The horror dawns. "If I were designing this system, I would tweak larvae to release substances that promote reliance." The patient was compelled to return for additional treatments. Only he had the antidote, so he wanted my text messages back. Reynolds approached. "Mrs. Walker, this information may help our investigation and your treatment. Based on your scientific skills, can you tell us more about his methods?" Beth closed her eyes to organize her confused thoughts. She persevered despite the room tilting and spinning. He would need to raise larvae in a specific environment to change their secretions, likely utilizing plant substances. This is comparable to traditional remedies that use insects bred on specific plants to concentrate qualities. A dreadful suspicion formed as she opened her eyes. "Did you analyze the plants used in the compound?" Dr. Harrison glanced at Reynolds. "We detected residues of various rainforest plant extracts. The whole analysis is ongoing in our lab." "I need to see the results," Beth said, attempting to sit up. Now, James gently pressed her back into the pillows. "Beth, make sure to rest. Let the doctors handle this," she said, her voice gaining strength and propelled by a desperate certainty. "If Hargrove is utilizing the method I suspect, I may have part of the solution." Dr. Harrison reluctantly presented the early analysis on his tablet. Beth examined the results. Her greatest worries realized. We collected samples from the same region as these chemicals. I studied these plants. Her palm trembled, not from weakness but from shock. I published specimens from 2 years ago and conducted study on anti-inflammatory effects in Amazonian flora. She gazed up at Dr. Harrison with wide eyes. He's using my research to create this toxin. The second narrative twist loomed. Beth had her life's effort used against her. The room went silent as everyone understood. Reynolds asked, "So Hargrove targeted you specifically?" Beth shook her head. "Don't think so. I consider that a bad coincidence. Published research is used to build his compounds. A colleague recommended him to me without knowing the link." A nurse interrupted the chat at the doorway. "Dr. Harrison, Mrs. Walker's recently completed blood work is ready." She paused, looking at Beth. Her daughter Lily is in the waiting area. Beth's cardiac monitor showed her fear surge. "What's wrong with Lily?" James gripped her hand. "She is fine. My parents visited you with their kids. She may be furious at seeing you like this." But Dr. Harrison was already moving for the door with a serious expression. "I will promptly check on both circumstances." His absence lasted as long as ours. Beth imagined a series of scary scenarios when Dr. Harrison returned. Before he spoke, her shoulders told her something was wrong. Mr. Walker proceeded cautiously. "I am concerned about Lily's symptoms. A little red welt on her arm resembles early stages of Mrs. Walker's infection." James argued that it was impossible. She has not gone near the Amazon. Despite not seeing a doctor, Lily reported finding her mother's jungle cream in the bathroom cupboard. Dr. Harrison softly explained. Hargrove gave Beth a small vial of cream to accelerate the process. She placed it to her arm since it smelled like the rainforest and she wanted to be like her mother. She put it in her bathroom cabinet with her botanical specimens and forgot about it once her symptoms started. "Oh God," Beth groaned, her terror intensifying. "James, the cabinet containing my field materials, has always captivated Emma." Dr. Harrison nodded grimly. "We have admitted Lily for observation and begun initial treatment. Fortunately, we caught it early." Dr. Harrison reported no larvae or toxin in Beth's system, only a localized inflammatory response to the substance. Beth's comfort was brief. "Our therapy approach is complicated by this development. Mrs. Walker, the toxicology team has found parts of the nervous system toxin, but producing an effective antitoxin without the full formula is difficult." "You claim you cannot treat me?" Beth said flatly. "Conventional approaches alone may be insufficient," Dr. Harrison emphasized. "However, your research connecting insight expands options. Understanding how plant components were transformed may help mitigate their effects." Beth's scientific mind temporarily overcame her parental panic. "I have my research notes on my tablet at home, including data on plant species, properties, and interactions with human tissue," James said, grabbing for his phone. "I will have my father fetch it." "Where exactly?" "I studied." "Top drawer of my desk," Beth said, moving to Dr. Harrison. "There's more. We studied an Amazonian anti-inflammatory fungus that fights rainforest insect neurotoxins." Dr. Harrison expressed hope that Hargrove's toxin, based on similar chemicals, could also be effective against his modified version. "I returned samples," Beth said. Her words are becoming more rapid. Beth experienced a deeper sense of purpose beyond fear for the first time since her admittance. She realized that the research that had caused her concerns and led her to Hargrove's clinic could now be her rescue. Detective Reynolds answered a call in the corner, while James arranged for her tablet and lab results to be sent to the hospital. Her face darkened as she listened. "That was my team," she said after hanging up. "We discovered Hargrove's flat, but he left quickly, judging by the state of the room." She paused. "The discovery of full photos, job histories, and publications was frightening. He has been monitoring your work for years." This discovery triggered a new wave of violation in Beth. Has he been monitoring her, waiting for the right time, or orchestrating her colleague's recommendation? "There's more," Reynolds said. "We identified research publications on his parasitic work. He says his substances are based on botanical study." "Your name appears multiple times." Beth clenched her eyes, bile rising in her throat. "So it wasn't a coincidence?" Reynolds softly affirmed, "It appears not. According to his notes, he viewed your research as complementary to his own and a real scientific discovery that could be used for his own goals. Beth was struck by its dreadful symmetry. During her trip to the Amazon, she documented healing plants, while Hargrove used that knowledge to harm and gain control over his victims. Dr. Harrison returned with cautious optimism after briefly checking on Lily. Lily is doing well with preliminary treatment. No systemic spread found. He looked at Beth more seriously. Unfortunately, your condition is progressing faster than anticipated. Recent testing indicate the poison is harming your autonomic nervous system more. James grabbed Beth's hand. What precisely does that mean? Dr. Harrison emphasized the urgency of expediting experimental treatment options. Toxin affects nerves that control involuntary processes, heart rate, breathing, and temperature. We can temporarily support these systems. But time is running out, Beth said to punctuate Dr. Harrison's opinion. Beth's body experienced a severe shaking. The monitors beside her bed screeched as her heart rate irregular, oxygen levels plummeted, and medical workers filled the room. James was taken outdoors, and Beth fell into darkness again. Lily, her curious, fearless daughter who only wanted to be like her mother, was her last thought. Beth's final realization before the blackness seized her was that emulation could cost them both their lives. Beth slowly regained consciousness, seeing the white hospital ceiling. Now the room was quiet. Crisis appears to be over. She felt chilly oxygen flow via a breathing mask. The new monitors beside her bed beeped a mechanical Greek chorus to her tragedy. James said, "She's awake," followed by the sound of a chair scratching across the floor to her right. As Dr. Harrison emerged in her frame of vision, his demeanor showed concern despite his professionalism. "Mrs. You had heart arrhythmia, Walker. We've stabilized you, but I need to be honest about your predicament." Beth nodded slightly, a simple movement costing significant effort. "A toxin has advanced beyond expectations." His words were carefully chosen as he paused to discuss the influence on your cardiovascular system and respiratory function. "Based on advancement rate, we anticipate 36 hours before irreparable damage occurs." 36 HRs. Beth should have been afraid, but she felt disconnected, as if the countdown applied to someone else. It could have been the drugs or her mind's resistance against the harsh reality. "Lily," she asked, her voice muffled by the oxygen mask. Dr. Harrison confirmed her positive response to treatment. "The early intervention seems effective. We developed a treatment plan based on your circumstance." Beth felt more relief than terror. At least Lily would survive. He stated that your research materials arrived while you were unconscious. Currently, our lab staff is evaluating fungus samples. Your notes have shed light on Hargrove's poison composition. James focused on her field of view. Though worn, his eyes burned with optimism. "Your work may rescue you, Beth." Trying to smile under the mask, Beth recalled her desire to save people. Despite her worries about her research becoming irrelevant, she saw the irony. It may now be her only hope. Dr. Harrison rechecked her vitals. "I need to verify lab results. Get rest." James sat alongside Mrs. Walker's bed, carefully holding her hand over IV lines and monitors following his departure. "The kids are asking about you. Mason wrote a card for you and Lily." His voice shook. "Lily, keep apologizing," Beth said, squeezing his hand tentatively. "I repeatedly told her it wasn't her fault." James wiped his eyes with his free hand. "Your parents are arriving by plane. They will land in 4 hours." Beth closed her eyes. Parents, father with practical wisdom and farmer's hands, mother with unwavering strength. They couldn't comprehend her passion for plants and her quest for therapeutic chemicals in isolated areas. But they always backed her. How would they view their brilliant daughter now, laid low by conceit and dishonesty? The thought made her feel ashamed, then determined. This would not be her legacy. She would not leave her children with the memory of a mother who gave up hard. Beth removed the oxygen mask. "My notes," she muttered. "Need to see them." James hesitated. The words "Beth, you need to rest," and "no time" were tough to say. She struggled to breathe without the mask. Duration, 36 hours. She must have convinced him with her expression to help. James took her tablet off the side table and helped her see it. Though her fingers were clumsy and somewhat numb, Beth focused on navigating to her research folders. Beth buried herself in her task, making time odd. Her scientific mind made links between her findings and her current situation, despite her deteriorating state. As Dr. Harrison and the head of the hospital's toxicology department returned, She scarcely noticed. "Mrs. Walker," Dr. Harrison remarked, replacing her oxygen mask gently. "You should rest." "I found something," she said, muffled voice. She shakily pointed to the tablet. "The fungus creates chemicals that bind to neurotoxins and insect venom." Dr. Patel, a toxicologist, expressed interest in the similar molecular structure harming me. "We've analyzed your samples." Unsurprised, Beth nodded at the disease. While reviewing her study with the doctors, Beth experienced a sense of professional satisfaction despite her apprehension: notes, second folder, experimental protocols. Having trained her entire life to identify healing chemicals in nature's unnoticed nooks, her life's current situation added urgency to a familiar approach. A nurse raced in, shattering the serenity. Dr. Harrison reports systemic involvement as Lily Walker's temperature spikes and she experiences numbness in her fingertips. As Beth sat up, panic boosted her strength beyond her awareness. James stood up, torn between his wife and daughter. "Go," Beth persisted, pushing him towards the door. "Lily needs you." Beth looked to Dr. Harrison in desperation as James left. "You said she was responding to treatment." "She was," he said, his countenance somber. "This is surprising. Wait, I need to examine her immediately." Beth clung to his sleeve with unexpected strength. "We focused on tissue samples due to active illness." Beth suggested that the cream may include different components, a stage of preparation. In order to test her theory, Dr. Harrison pursued James, who was left alone. Beth faced the ceiling, counting the seconds of her 36-hour countdown. The realization that Lily was now actively infected and in danger was almost terrible. As Beth gasped for air, the monitors beside her registered her anxiety. His visage was somber yet composed for 20 minutes. Like 20 years before Dr. Harrison returned. He informed her, "You were right. The cream includes a preparation ingredient that fosters parasite growth. More than just an attractant. Tissue is actively modified to assist larval growth." Beth questioned Lily, fearing the response. "We adjusted her treatment based on new information," he added in detail. "I must be honest with you. Lily's case is on track with comparable evolution, although at an earlier stage. The lab anticipates 72 hours before essential involvement." Beth felt the room tilt as the implications hit her. Her daughter was a few steps behind her on the same dreadful path, and the countdown was on for both of them. "The fungal extract," Beth murmured, her scientist mind still working despite her fear. "Has there been any progress?" "That's why I returned," Dr. Harrison stated with a hint of cautious optimism. "Dr. Patel proposes synthesizing a chemical to mitigate the toxin's effects based on your findings." However, Beth sensed a difficulty and waited for the next step. Antitoxin production requires time and resources. In 12 hours, the lab thinks we can make one full adult treatment or multiple pediatric dosages. One full treatment or several smaller ones, adult or child, Beth or Lily. The connotation was unclear. "Give it to Lily," Beth responded confidently. "All of it. Mrs. Walker, this is not a discussion." Beth surprised him by stopping him. "My daughter receives treatment. My illness is advanced. Hers was caught early. The medical logic is evident," as Dr. Harrison examined her face. "You should address this with your husband," but Beth insisted otherwise. "This is my choice. My error caused this. I won't let Lily pay." Detective Reynolds entered before Dr. Harrison could react. A tense expression. "Doctor, an issue, Harrison." Hargrove made touch. Both turned to her in amazement. Reynolds entered the room and indicated that he had emailed the hospital administration. "He offers the antidote for a price." "What price?" Dr. Harrison questioned, his voice strained. "Immunity from prosecution and $1 million. Reynolds responded bitterly. "That's absurd," Dr. Harrison laughed. "The DA would never agree to those terms," Reynolds said. "It gets worse. He asserts that his clients will die without his ongoing treatment. He is holding numerous patients hostage." Beth closed her eyes. Hargrove's brutality overwhelmed her. How many women did his customized parasites infect? How many needed him to relieve the anguish he caused? What email did Dr. Harrison request? "Our tech team is investigating, but he is using advanced encryption." "It may take time we don't have," Reynolds paused. Dr. Harrison included a partial formula for the antidote as proof of good faith, which may be beneficial despite being incomplete. "Can I see?" While reviewing the formula on Reynolds' tablet, Beth had a distinct arm sensation, not numbness or pain, but something new, a scorching that appeared to emanate from her bones and expand fast toward her shoulder. Her voice was paralyzed as she tried to alert others. Her breathing suddenly strained. The monitors beside her bed shouted to inform the medical team of her deteriorating health. As nurses flooded the room, Dr. Harrison ran to her side and ordered. Beth heard words above her breathing problems: increased toxicity, heart involvement. Through pandemonium, Detective Reynolds' phone rang. After answering, she took a step back and returned to Dr. Harrison, expressing urgency. They had found Hargrove. He was seen entering a Cambridge private clinic, while Dr. Harrison attended to Beth. "Send a team quickly. People are gathering." "There's more," Reynolds said. The tech team examined the partial formula. They view it as a trap. It contains components that heighten the effects of poisons, not mitigate them. "He's messing with us," Dr. Harrison muttered, losing his professional composure. Beth lapsed in and out of consciousness as doctors stabilized her. Her cognizant periods revealed important conversation, treatment alternatives, declining metrics, and time restrictions. Her illness worsened faster than expected, shortening the 36-hour countdown. In a moment of clarity, she saw James crying near her bed. He told Lily that her fever was climbing, his voice breaking. Beth was transported to intensive care and attempted to ask about fungal treatment, but her voice was unresponsive. James seemed to grasp it. "Doctor, according to Patel, the chemical from your research is nearing synthesis. Some more hours." He squeezed Beth's hand, but she couldn't feel anything due to numbness. "Just wait, Beth. Please be patient, as the ethics committee is currently deliberating and we do not have time for bureaucratic hand-wringing. We must decide on therapy allocation immediately." Dr. Beth responded calmly to Patel's obvious words. "Despite the created chemical, Mrs. Walker's prognosis remains uncertain. Toxin has extensively damaged the nervous system. Although critical, her daughter's ailment was detected sooner. So, we should prioritize the child?" Dr. Harrison stated bluntly. "I suggested considering where the treatment will be most beneficial," Dr. Patel said. "The ethical committee and family make the final decision." Beth felt a sense of serenity after hearing this. The medical logic matched her parental instinct. Patient Lily would receive treatment. Lily survived. Now only that mattered. In the pediatric intensive care unit, 12-year-old Lily Walker lay in a bed that dwarfed her small frame, her arms swollen and discolored, her cheeks flushed with fever. Nurses adjusted medications, checked vitals, and reassured her. "Is my mother improving?" Lily begged her father, her voice small and terrified. James pulled her hair back from her forehead, his heart hurting again at the question. "The physicians are doing their best, sweetie. Your mother is powerful. I should not have touched her special cream." "No, honey. No," James argued with passion. "This is not your fault. This is not your fault." As Lily fell asleep, James was split between 2 hospital rooms, 2 bedsides, and 2 lives in danger. He struggled to breathe under the unfathomable weight of potential loss. How did they get this nightmare? A moment of vanity, insecurity, or a seemingly insignificant action ruined his family, leaving his wife and daughter battling for their lives. The hospital chapel was empty when James Walker knelt, praying incoherently. Though he was never religious, rationality was no comfort. Negotiating with any power that would listen. "Take me instead. Save them. Please." The hospital's steady pace continued outside the chapel. Scientists rushed to extract and manufacture chemicals from Beth's fungus samples in the lab. A team prepared for probable intervention in the surgery suite if Beth's health worsened. Investigator Reynolds checked her firearm and prepared to confront the guy who had arranged this nightmare in an unmarked police vehicle approaching a discreet Cambridge clinic. 24 hours left. The countdown clock resumed its relentless advance. By evening, Beth's condition exceeded the medical team's worst-case scenario. She suffered intermittent seizures and more cardiac arrhythmias due to the poison spreading throughout her nervous system. She weakened with each episode, draining her body's reserves to sustain fundamental operations. A tiny intensive care unit had been created in the hospital room. Beth now had a ventilator, whose repetitive hiss and click complemented her failing system's monitors. As the poison affected several organs, Dr. Harrison brought in neurologists, cardiologists, and nephrologists. James spent time between Beth's and Lily's rooms, making the short walk a pilgrimage of sadness and hope. He sat with his wife, who was deteriorating despite modern medicine, in Beth's room. In Lily's, he calmed a child whose dangerous condition was stable despite intense therapy. Mister, when Dr. Harrison entered Beth's room, his voice was soothing. We need to talk. James looked up, his eyes red-rimmed from sleeplessness and silent weeping. A fungal therapy by doctor. Using your wife's findings, Patel created a chemical, as validated by Dr. Ted Harrison. However, as previously said, we must make a tough allocation decision. James nodded numbly. He overheard the doctor's chat hours prior. You want to give Lily it medically. Your daughter's treatment prognosis is much better than your wife's, as Dr. Harrison revealed. The ethics committee determined that regular triage practices prioritize patients with the highest possibility of full recovery. James said, and Beth, barely audible over the ventilator's cadence. Dr. Harrison's professional demeanor weakened, displaying his human side. We will continue supportive care and symptomatic treatment. I won't lie. Without targeted intervention against the poison, her chances are poor, Mr. Walker. James turned to see his wife, her face hidden by the ventilator mask. Her body dwarfed in the hospital bed, this dazzling, lively lady reduced to failing systems and worrisome readouts. Finally, James stated, she made the decision. Dr. Harrison nodded unsurprised when she advised to give it all to Lily before the ventilator. This matches her past claims to me. However, as her next of kin, you must make the final decision. James closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the dilemma. What would you do, he asked abruptly, if it were your wife and child? The doctor paused. I would likely follow your wife's decision, he said. James carefully handled Beth's limp hand, taking care of the IV lines and monitoring devices. I need time alone with her. James moved his chair closer to Beth's bedside when Dr. Harrison left. They say you may be able to hear me, he said, his voice breaking. Hope that's true. I now understand why you went to Hargrove, the pressure you felt, and the fear of being invisible. He softly massaged her hand. I should have noticed. I should have told you how amazing and gorgeous you are. As always, the ventilator resumed its steady operation, responding exclusively to his words. Lily will be okay, he said. They are treating her with the treatment based on your research. This research is saving our daughter, Beth, as you always intended. James wiped tears from his cheeks. Mason is staying with my folks. He made you a card with pressed leaves from our backyard, like Mom, he continued. A little smile appeared on James's face. They will be okay. Beth, whatever happens, I promise, I need you to fight. In the corridor outside, Dr. Harrison spoke quietly with Detective Reynolds, who had just returned from the raid on Hargrove's clinic. Reynolds expressed frustration, saying, We arrived too late. He vanished, but we found his lab and took his stuff. The forensics team is analyzing everything. Does the antidote exist? Inquired Dr. Harrison, even though his tone indicated he already knew the answer. Shaking her head, Reynolds, nothing clearly labeled. At least 15 women with comparable profiles to Mrs. Walker, professional women in competitive areas, and possible hostages to his therapies were found in his patient records, Dr. Harrison concluded grimly. Were any research materials, formulas, lab notes, or volumes found? They are being brought to our lab. Reynolds paused as I emailed copies immediately to you and Dr. Patel. There's more. Hargrove has been watching Mrs. Walker's studies for years, according to records. Dr. Harrison's countenance worsened as he possessed copies of her published studies and some material gained from her university accounts. This was not random. He targeted her. It seemed so. Her research was important to his work, according to his notes. Reynolds shook her head in dismay. He praises her work as innovative while intending to use it for his own gain. A middle-aged couple appeared in the elevator down the corridor, their expressions showing the tension of parents in crisis. As they approached the nurse's station, the woman held her husband's arm and requested Elizabeth Walker's room. Dr. Harrison left Detective Reynolds to meet with Beth's parents, presenting himself and offering guidance through their daughter's nightmare. James was keeping watch in Beth's room when his phone notification caught his attention. Unknown number sent message. Walker research promising. Possible antidote synthesis. Specific activation is needed for botanicals. Check specimen prep notes. James glanced at the message, adrenaline rushing through his tired body. Was this from Hargrove a trap or a raider who found something important? After a brief pause, he sent the message to Dr. Harrison, adding, Just received this. Could matter. Possibly nothing. Dr. Harrison entered the room shortly, Dr. Patel close behind. Where is Mrs. Walker's tablet? Dr. Harrison demanded directly. James pointed to the side table where the device was left untouched as Beth's condition worsened. Dr. Patel instantly accessed Beth's research files. "What's that?" Dr. Harrison stated. "That message may be legitimate." While Dr. Patel scanned the data, the forensics team at Hargrove's lab discovered a necessary activation pathway for fungal drugs to be effective against his toxin. Dr. Patel abruptly turned the tablet to show both men her specimen preparation notes. She describes a two-stage extraction procedure to preserve anti-inflammatory effects. The second stage breaks molecular bonds with an enzymatic catalyst. The doctors looked at each other intently. "That may be what we're missing," said Dr. Patel. "Can you activate the molecule we produced but did not activate it according to the protocols?" James questioned, his voice heaving with hope. Dr. Patel said, "We can try," headed out the door. While Dr. Patel rushed to the lab, Dr. Harrison looked to James with cautious excitement. "If successful, we could develop a treatment for Beth and Lily." James felt relief in his knees. "Are you sure about both?" "Nothing is certain," Dr. Harrison said. "This new information alters our strategy. If the molecule is fully activated, it could produce enough for 2 treatments." James felt hopeful for the first time in days. Turning to Beth, he squeezed her hand. "Did you hear about a possible solution?" At the pediatric intensive care unit, Lily's condition worsened. Numbness extended from her fingertips to her entire hand as her fever rose rapidly. The medical team was preparing to administer the synthetic treatment when Dr. Harrison asked them to wait for the updated version. The pediatric doctor said, "We can't wait much longer. Her symptoms worsen." 2 hours, Dr. Harrison promised. The lab requested 2 hours to finish the new process. James counted the minutes, divided his time between the 2 bedsides, and encouraged his wife and daughter. Beth's parents had arrived. They took positions on the other side of her bed to complete the family circle, their horror at seeing their exuberant daughter so reduced turning into calm determination. Dr. Patel and his staff worked hard in the hospital lab. Beth's precise notes on activating the fungal substance were ironic, as she was documenting a potentially life-saving process. Beth had a further serious seizure about midnight. The medical team raced in to treat the convulsions, but the damage was serious. Brain pressure was rising and kidney function was decreasing rapidly, according to scan. "We are losing her," Dr. Harrison frankly told James after stabilizing her again. "The next few hours are crucial." James recognized the stakes and did not need to complete the sentence if the amended treatment was not sent shortly. Upon returning to Beth's bedside, he repeated his desperate bargaining from the chapel. Beth Walker drifted between consciousness and oblivion in her hospital bed, surrounded by life-sustaining equipment. She stood in the Amazon rainforest at twilight, surrounded by familiar noises and smells. Beth saw Sarah, her childhood friend, unaltered since she last saw her. "You're running out of time, Bethy," Sarah whispered. "I know," Beth said, "but Lily will be okay." Sarah shook her head. "Your work is incomplete. There is more to uncover and share." Beth admitted she was too exhausted to speak to James or her physicians. Fighting is painful. "When does Beth Sherman Walker abandon a research project?" Sarah asked, using Beth's childhood maiden name. The teenager who spent 3 days in a tree blind to study butterfly feeding patterns, and the lady who crossed monsoon floods to reach a rural village with a potential plant treatment. Before Beth could react, the trees faded, and Sarah's vision became blurred. "They're calling you back," her pal added. The monitors signaled another crisis in the morning, prompting a decision. Beth had a decrease in heart rate and oxygen levels despite the ventilator's attempts. After the medical team arrived again, James was shoved to the side, watching helplessly as they fought to save her. At 2:17 a.m., Dr. Patel dashed into Beth's room with a sealed medical container. His lab coat was rumpled and his eyes bloodshot from hours of concentration, but his face was breakthrough-like. He informed Dr. Harrison, who was monitoring Beth's crisis, that they had succeeded. The activation process was successful. The chemical exhibits strong binding to toxin molecules in test samples, prompting the medical team to prepare for the experimental treatment. Although Beth was stabilized, each recovery left her weaker and depleted her body's supplies with each struggle. "We have 2 complete treatment protocols," Dr. Patel told James, who watched with hope as the specialists worked. "One for your wife and one for your daughter." As the pediatric staff administers Lily's medication, James sheds tears of relief. "How soon will we know whether it works?" Dr. Harrison injected the golden brown liquid into Beth's IV line, stating that the effects would start within hours. If successful, The substance will bind to toxin molecules and neutralize them, preventing further damage. It may also restore impaired neural circuits. Detective Reynolds arrived with William Hargrove handcuffed in the corridor outside. The shamed doctor was nothing like Beth's trusted advisor weeks ago. He was now wearing rumpled business clothes instead of his expensive clothes after hours of interrogation. "Doctor," Harrison Reynolds called from the doorway. "A word in the hallway," she said softly. He was tracked, attempting to catch a flight to Panama. It was on him. She showed a little metal case. Complete formulations with lab-verified antidotes he intended to practice abroad. Dr. Harrison looked at Hargrove with scorn. "Why bring him here?" "Two reasons," Reynolds said. "First, he must confirm the efficacy of your synthesized medicine." Hargrove remained silent, but his gaze darted between the officers around him and the chambers where his victims fought for their life. Dr. Patel came to examine the formulas recovered from Hargrove. "These align with what we synthesized," he affirmed after researching. "Activation procedure appears functioning properly." Could Mrs. Walker's fungal compound be more successful than Hargrove's initial antidote? Reynolds commanded Hargrove. "Will their treatment be effective?" The man remained silent, his look unreadable. "Listen carefully," Dr. Harrison said, approaching Hargrove. "The woman in the room is barely surviving, while a 12-year-old girl down the hall is fighting the toxin you made. Take advantage of any remaining humanity or information to help others." Hargrove's eyes showed a hint of professional pride, not guilt. "The fungal extract," he replied, his voice hoarse. "It is theoretically sound and better than my formulation." Dr. Harrison was planned to use comparable chemicals in his next generation of medicines. "You mean your intentional infections?" Hargrove's face hardened. "You wouldn't understand. Standard medicine is stagnant and risk-averse. My approaches hasten discoveries by years, but at what cost?" Reynolds spoke up. 15 ladies were unknowingly affected, lost lives. Hargrove answered, "I miscalculated with Walker. The interaction with her research substances accelerated the spread of toxins faster than expected. A nurse ran from Beth's room as they chatted. Doctor, the gang returned to Beth's bedside to find that her stats were improving. The monitors showed tiny but significant changes. As her oxygen saturation rose, her heart rate normalized. It works. Doctor. Patel checked the latest measurements and observed a decrease in her blood toxin levels. James, who had never left Beth, looked up, fatigued and hopeful. She will return. It's early, warned Dr. Harrison. Reynolds received a call from her affected arm indicating a restoration of sensation. Both mother and daughter benefited from treatment. Hargrove watched the event with disconcerting clinical coldness and frustrated ambition. I could have improved the process, he grumbled to himself. The right money and facilities may have transformed dermatological therapy. You're still not seeing it. In amazement, Reynolds stated that these individuals are not research subjects, but rather individuals. This woman is a mother, wife, and scientist who has made more contributions to medicine than your perverted experiments. James observed Beth's twitching fingers in his hand during the hallway encounter. Afraid to hope, he leaned forward. Hi, Beth, can you hear me? The eyelids flickered and opened halfway. He saw her straining to focus on his face through the ventilator mask. Dr. Harrison, James called, his voice breaking. She's awake. The medical team quickly assessed Beth's condition. Her neurological reactions improved minute by minute as the chemical entered her system. Within an hour, she was responsive enough for Dr. Harrison to try removing the ventilator and replacing it with an oxygen mask. James. After the breathing tube was withdrawn, Beth whispered in a faint voice. He assured her, I'm here, with tears flowing down his face. Lily is also improving. Beth's eyes got wider when she heard Lily's name, bringing relief to her face. My research? Dr. Harrison provided a brief overview of the fungal substance, its activation method, and its breakthrough impact. Mrs. Walker, your work achieved what modern medicine could not. She slowly assimilated the information, her mind still cloudy from drugs and shock. Hargrove, she mumbled. Have they caught him? James and Dr. Harrison glanced. Yes, James said. Detective Reynolds brought him in a couple hours ago. His arrest cast a shade over Beth's face. He utilized my research. Didn't he develop the toxin? Dr. Harrison nodded grimly. It appears he's been studying your articles for years, adopting your plant compound findings for his own purposes. James nervously continued. The worst part is that this wasn't random. You were targeted because of your studies, Beth. He wanted to see how his toxin might affect someone exposed to comparable substances. The revelation hit Beth like a physical blow. The years of fieldwork, thorough documentation, and proudly published peer-reviewed studies had been used against her by a guy who considered human misery as an acceptable cost of pioneering work. "I want to see him," Beth replied abruptly, her voice gaining strength. "Beth, you're still critically ill," James said. "You should rest." "I must comprehend," she insisted. Dr. Harrison hesitated before nodding, uncertain about how a healer might choose to damage. "If your vitals are steady, a quick encounter may bring closure for a few minutes." Beth's bed was carefully raised. Doctors Harrison entered the hallway and returned with Detective Reynolds and handcuffed Hargrove. Beth's consciousness astonished the disgraced doctor, who may have been calculating the efficacy of his toxin and its antidote. "Doctor," Beth said, Hargrove with a weak but steady voice, "I have one question. Why did Hargrove examine her clinically before responding? Your findings indicated that conventional channels were slower to emerge." Beth was shocked to learn that I had expedited the process by poisoning ladies without their consent. He set up a system that required results and corrected without remorse. "Every medical advancement costs. Your fungal species research may have sat in academic journals for years. Since my work would expedite clinical applications, Beth faced her own scientific aim to heal through ethical research and patient process. Hargrove chose exploitation and injury for speed. Finally, she said, "You're wrong. Real science respects life." As Reynolds led Hargrove away, Beth rested against her pillows, fatigued but lighter after the brief confrontation. In the pediatric unit, the man who nearly destroyed her family was a man, not a monster or a scientific visionary. Lily recovered sufficiently to go from intensive care to a regular room. Her less advanced condition responded better to the experimental treatment, and her youthful body was more resilient. Slowly, the Walker family was recovering from their horror. 6 months later, Beth Walker addressed a packed Massachusetts General Hospital Medical School auditorium of students, researchers, and physicians. Now free from the IV lines and monitoring equipment that had maintained her for weeks, her left arm had obvious scarring, a lifelong reminder of how close she came to losing everything. Her voice was stronger than it has been in months as she said that beauty and healing had always been linked. Both express our primal needs to be recognized, loved, and whole. When ethics and compassion are ignored, the repercussions can be disastrous. The audience listened intently as Beth recounted her journey from insecurities to Hargrove's clinic to the research that saved her and her daughters. She candidly discussed her vanity and its near cost. "I made decisions without scientific skepticism as a scientist." She said, "I let fear of aging, irrelevance, and invisibility override my meticulous judgment in other areas of my life." James witnessed his wife's recovery in the front row with pride and awe. Lily, now 13, sat next him, unburdened by her ordeal, which may have made others mistrust medicine or science. Instead, Lily found her calling. She wrote meticulously in her lap notebook, resembling her mother. Beth's recuperation took time. After 3 weeks in the hospital, she had months of physical therapy to repair her neurological damage from the poison. She still had periodic finger numbness and needed regular monitoring to ensure no poison remained in her system. Physical challenges were minor compared to emotional mending. Beth felt guilty for Lily's exposure, furious at Hargrove's deception, and ashamed of her actions. Her family's continuous support and regular therapy helped her forgive herself. "The natural environment I've spent my career studying produced the toxin that nearly killed me and the treatment that rescued me." Beth moved on to her point. The goal and tactics of compound use differed. Unethical science isn't science. It's technique without soul. The Walker family found a new normal in the months after their trauma. James took a vacation from his engineering firm to help Beth heal, realizing how much he had missed his children's daily life. Paradoxically, the family-destroying crisis had drawn them closer. Beth's career changed too. This fungus finding, which was rushed into clinical trials, showed promise for treating neurotoxins and other inflammatory disorders. Her department received funds for a potential breakthrough treatment that began as another paper. "My story has cautions, but I am not a cautionary tale," Beth spoke, scanning the audience. "I witnessed the power of ethical science, the healing potential of the natural environment when honored in rigorous, and the resilience of the human body and spirit. Beth caressed her arm scarring after her talk, accepting it as part of her narrative and herself rather than hiding it under long sleeves as she had in the early days of her recovery. She stated, "These scars are my worst mistake in discovery. They remind me daily that true value is wisdom, not youth or unweariness." The applause was long and warm. Beth hugged Lily and Mason and took James's hand after answering student and teacher inquiries. As they left, he whispered, "You were amazing. You feeling?" She admitted fatigue but seemed healthy. Outside, autumn had turned the trees rich crimson and gold, and the afternoon heat warmed the brisk October air. Beth's fungal samples had revealed life-saving secrets in the research wing, and the walkers slowly crossed the hospital grounds past the emergency door where they had arrived in terror 6 months ago. Beth commented as they neared their car, "I've been thinking about cutting back my fieldwork, not giving it up, just balancing differently, being home more." James was surprised. "Are you sure?" he asked cautiously. "The Amazon has always fascinated you." Beth smiled as she watched her children walk ahead, Lily explaining something scientific to her younger brother, who listened patiently. "For infrequent trips, the Amazon will be there, but I've found valuable things to study closer to home." As the sun set over Boston, the Walker family gathered around their dining table for a simple ritual that had taken on new meaning since their trauma. In that moment of connection, surrounded by the nearly separated family, Beth caught James's look across the table as she passed dishes and listened to her children's exuberant stories of their day. Beth acknowledged the entire circle of her path from fear to strength, shame to purpose, near death to new life. Her arm could never heal, and her neurological effects may last for years, but her spirit was altered by the forces she had spent her life studying. Beth realized that no cosmetic procedure could match the intrinsic beauty of a completely lived life by accepting her aging reflection in the mirror each morning. All wrinkles and scars, Beth's story shows that even in our senior years we feel pressure to seem young. Everyone has felt that pain in the mirror, wondering if our appearance betrays our vitality, or if others regard us as irrelevant or old. Beth's choice makes sense in a world that values young. Many of us have considered shortcuts, miracle creams, too good to be true procedures, and clinics with curiously low prices. Beth's tale goes beyond caution. It shows our age-related knowledge, creases on our faces, and silver hair. These are signs of fulfilled lives, not defects. They symbolize life lessons, triumphs, and the beauty of intricacy. Accepting these marks of time as proof of our resiliency is true healing. Learning, loving, and leaving a legacy have always been more valuable than looking youthful. Accepting ourselves as we are in our wisdom years is more beautiful than any promise of youth.